Hi everyone, it's been a while since I've done a video. I figured I'd bring you along for my spring cleanup and getting the greenhouse ready and have a little chat about what's been happening lately. This video is supported by our Patreon contributors. Our top sponsors are TrueAquaponics.com, GreenLifePlanet.net, GlassBottleOutlet.com, and GrowPockets.com. Please support our channel by joining Patreon and visiting our sponsors' sites. So the first thing we need to take care of is getting the snow removal equipment off the back of the tractor. Without a doubt, this tractor is probably one of the best investments I've ever made because it sure does make life much easier for dealing with plowing in the winters. The newer tractors have these nice adjustments for the 3-point hitch. You go old school and have to pound the pins and stuff in and out of these. Loosen it up the right way to get the right tension to get the pins out. So it was going the right way the first time. There you go. The other trick is not to lose everything. At this point, my batteries on the microphone died, and I was explaining how the previous owner of this tractor had made this custom frame where you have to remove the bucket and the snowplow will attach into it. I was probably also grumbling a little bit how, once again, I don't have any quick attachment things to make this job far easier. I have to go and pick up the bucket and try to get all these holes aligned. Overall, it takes about an hour to get everything switched off and back on with this tractor. I had 1.2 million grow grips made up, so I purchased this shipping container to store everything. For some reason, when the driver dropped off the container, he decided not to stay on the main trail and drove through the snow and then got his tractor trailer stuck in here. It cost him about $500 to get a tow truck in and pull him out. He made a pretty good mess of the greenhouse pad site, so had to spend a little bit of time getting it all leveled out and get that area ready. When the grow grips were delivered, the driver also didn't listen to my warning about driving off the road and got his truck stuck also. So my crew and I unloaded the truck by hand and carried everything across the field while we waited for the tow truck to show up once again to pull him out. It also cost him another $500, plus he managed to break his brake lines to the trailer when he drove the trailer over the snowbank. We're pretty much done with the risk of frost, so I'm going to spend a little time cleaning up our outdoor bed. I basically just sort of abandoned it over the winter and let everything die off on its own. Brought in some of the rafts and never finished cleaning it up. Of course, not having it covered made a huge mess with the leaves and other junk in here, so I gotta get that cleaned out. I did let it drain, and then I put the overflow back in a couple of weeks ago and let the rain start filling this in again. But for the most part, it looks like it did pretty well. I think next year I'll definitely put a cover over it just to save myself the aggravation of having to get all this leaf litter out of here. I'm still slowly getting around to the bigger greenhouse. Unfortunately for everybody that subscribes to the channel, they are going to have to continue waiting a little bit. I picked up another contract project for some design work and finish that up. I'll try to do some greenhouse work over the summer, but it really isn't going to be as high of a priority for me as it was before. Unfortunately, the bills get paid with my design work and not my farm work. So I take the work as I can get it. I'm also working on another product development for something that we're going to be selling. It's going to be a while until it's ready, and it's a pretty big deal for us. We're really excited about it, and I'm hoping this summer to start off another Kickstarter campaign to help fund part of it. It's a really expensive thing to get up and running. So stay tuned to that and to see what that's going to be. I shouldn't really be surprised. I had a friend of mine warn me about the UV breaking down the styrofoam. Everything has this powder on it, and I never had this problem inside the greenhouse, but everything is UV panels in there, so it's been helping to protect everything. I have rafts in there that are several years old now, and they don't have a problem, and just in one summer these things are starting to get all nasty and fuzzy. So I think next time around I should have to find something else or paint these. I definitely have to clean up a little bit better next fall. I keep finding grow grips all over our property from them blowing around over the winter. They're still perfectly good, but I don't want them all over the property. Not much survived over the winter, except for a few weeds that have decided to plant themselves. Oops. Even have full roots, so they're definitely a frost tolerant, some type of a grass. I don't have much use for it in my system, but it's funny to see these after the system being frozen for the last 3 months. This side of the bed doesn't have a lot of leaf litter in the bottom, yet on this side there's a whole bunch. It just sort of proves that our prevailing winds here are going from the west to the east, so everything blows down to this side and eventually sinks down here. Even the few grow grips that are up along the surface are slowly working their way up to this end. I don't have a whole lot of good ideas, but I guess I'll just use my fish net to take out the leaf litter, stir things up a bit. Yeah, this will work pretty good. Well, the water looks horrible, but it's certainly much cleaner. I think we'll see what this pool skimmer can do for the finer things. Not quite as good as the big net for lots of removal, but not too bad. I think we'll have to work on a better way to clean this out, but to get things started, it'll be okay. Right now the water's cold enough or you aren't going to get any algae in here. But once the sun starts hitting this on a more regular basis, it's going to warm right up, so I got to get my rafts back in here and get some lettuce growing again. I've got this pool skimmer at the town trash to treasure recycling barn, as some people like to call it, the town shopping mall. I think I'll let this settle out for a little bit. Not too bad. I might come out with the shop vac and skim everything off the bottom or something. I'll put some thought into it and figure it out in a few days. I'll give you a quick tour of what's been happening inside the greenhouse now that we're just coming out of winter. The beet greens, I said earlier in the past video that they do really well in the winter, and they're definitely full grown now. You'll notice that there's this white powder over them. It's just a whole bunch of diatomaceous earth. I've had a horrible problem with aphids this winter. Keeping it more or less warm. They have a great place to winter over, and plenty of lettuce in here. They had a feast, and then they started moving on to the beets. The diatomaceous earth helps a little bit, but it really doesn't get them all. The aphids don't bother the strawberries a whole lot, but they're definitely in here. These did blossom and are now fruiting. This one's going to be ready in a couple of weeks. These are just some smaller plants that I saved from last year. I think I said last year I had a problem in the spring with some fruit flies, so I had pulled everything out. We had 100% crop loss with the strawberries, and these were some of the plants that I saved because they didn't appear to be infected, and I treated them, and they'll produce again this year. I have to keep a real close eye on them for the fruit flies though. I have some new lettuce starting up. These are just some of the little seedlings reaching for the sun. Even though we're spring, we still don't get a ton of sun yet. It's coming along. The raft beds are basically empty. I just have this salvinia growing in here. Most of it dies off for the winter and it gets mixed in with some algae, just enough to cover the beds. So here's my very sad lettuce, what's left of it, even with the diatomaceous earth. By now these would have been full grown and beautiful, but the aphids did a deed on them, and I've just been pulling them out as I feel like it. Even on this blade of grass, there's a whole bunch of aphids on it. The celery did extremely well. It's now submarining the raft. It's going underneath water here. Again, covered in diatomaceous earth. I've never seen the aphids bother this before, but once they ran out of lettuce, they moved on to this. Doesn't phase it a whole lot, but it's time for the celery to come out. This Meyer lemon tree is now blossoming. The entire greenhouse has this beautiful smell to it. It only takes a couple blossoms to really make it smell nice in here. And I'll wind up pruning the majorities off. This is still a fairly small plant, so I'll leave half a dozen, maybe 8 or 9 lemons on this bush. If you don't prune them off, they just all stay too small. Here's the oregano, and this has definitely sprung back. In the last video, this is just a stick mess. Looked like it wasn't even going to survive, but it's coming back with a vengeance. And this used to be one plant, and every so often I just hack it back down to one plant, but it'll just keep spreading and spreading. It definitely can become evasive if you don't keep an eye on it. These are my seedlings starting. I got some cabbage in here. So these are the basil, not looking too good, a little too cold. Some peppers, some kale, and the tomatoes. You can see they get that reddish tint on there. It's still a little too cold for them, but about now they should really start kicking in and doing well. My new bell siphon design, I did a video on that a while back ago, has been doing really well. Basically they're going non-stop without any problem. Still get the typical comments on my channel that I overcomplicated it, but I still argue if it runs 100% of the time for a hair more complication, it's definitely worth the aggravation to use these. There really is no aggravation. And nasturtium is another great crop that grows in the late winter, early spring. It's also suffering from some aphid damage too. They're really starting to take control of these leaves. My banana plant that I planted last year, it didn't make it. I don't think it was the cold weather. It just had some type of a mildew or fungal disease on it, and it just struggled all last year. It finally died over the winter once the cold set in. It's hard to catch them on camera, but my fungus gnats are all back again, which is pretty typical in the spring, and I can get rid of those without any problem just using some nematodes. And nematodes don't survive over the winter, so the fungus gnats take hold, but now that the water's getting a little bit warmer, they'll be fine. Our rosemary monstrosity has been blooming non-stop for a couple of months. It does really well in here, and the aphids don't like it. Maybe I should make some rosemary. Here's my tea bush, and the second one here. Been growing really well. It has a lot of new growth on it. At some point I'll start picking some leaves and actually making some tea. Here's some thyme hiding back here. This is doing well. I just leave it alone and pick it as we need it. And I have one lone radish growing in here. I just sort of let it start to bolt now, and now it's blossoming, and I'll harvest the seeds off of this and replant them. Radish is extremely easy to get the seeds out of and just reuse them. It doesn't make much sense to buy them when these things produce zillions of them. So that's about it for now. I wanted to thank you for watching, and at some point I'll get around to doing some of that new greenhouse work. I know everybody wants to see it, and so do I, but other things in life are just getting in the way of it right now. Thanks for watching.